Hi, everybody. I'm going to start. I'm Allison Wiper. I'm the Artist Knowledge Manager at the Center for Cultural Innovation, also known as CCI. We are honored to be co-presenting Diversifying Funding Strategies for Arts and Culture Nonprofits with our good friend, Krista Smith. CCI was founded in 2001 as a California 501c3 nonprofit corporation with a mission to support individuals in the arts. So artists, cultural bearers, creative entrepreneurs, to realize greater self-determination so as to unfetter their productivity, free expression, and social impact, which contributes to shaping our collective national identity in ways that reflect the diversity of society. We support arts workers through professional development workshops such as this, also professional development grants, special research, and programs including our Ambitious initiative and the Soul Center for Liberated Work. So you can learn more about us at cciarts.org. We have offices in San Francisco and LA, but our staff work remotely across the US. Today, I'm calling in from Echo Park, Los Angeles. And before we start, I just want to honor the Tongva, Kizh, Tataviam, and Chumash peoples on whose land I am now living and CCI is headquartered, and the elders, both past and present, who have stewarded this land through the generations. And I'd like to additionally acknowledge my own ancestors' role in the colonization of these and other traditional lands, and the lands that we are occupying through virtual space, and the ways in which the technologies we're using today are part of a continuing history of colonization. So if you want to learn more about the Indigenous lands where you are, you can visit native-land.ca. I'm going to hand things over to my colleague, Jenny Lynn.
All right, y'all. Hello, I'm Jenny Lynn Bailon. I'm a program associate at CCI, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about our space together today, some housekeeping. So as questions come up, drop them in the chat. I will do my best to, if it feels timely, I will interject, but if not, we will keep it separate and we'll circle back. Or as mentioned by Kelsey, this 90-minute presentation is going to be jam-packed, and there will be some group discussion. We encourage you, return to the June 29th 1-hour Q&A, which is not going to be recorded. So we can have a more candid conversation. We can have open discussions in a way that feels really safe to y'all. So please come back. To follow along with the presentation. And of course, if you don't want to be, jotting down notes really hurriedly, we're actually going to be dropping in today's slides right here in the chat. And then of course, you'll be able to check back for this recording if you want to circle back to something as well. And so with that, I'm going to hand it over. Krista, go on.
Thank you all. Thank you all so much for your warm welcome and opening up this space for us. And hey, everybody. Hey, all. My name is Krista Smith, and I'm tuning in today from Columbus, Ohio, though I'm a Kentuckian, born and raised. And I hope any of you SEC Arkansas folks don't hate me for that, but I was so excited when Allison reached out to me about this opportunity to meet with y'all today, because as a Southerner who has lived in a lot of other places in the United States, I am always passionate to meet and connect with other folks in the southeastern part of the United States. What we face as arts and cultural practitioners here in this part of the country is very unique. And this part of the country receives the least amount of funding of any other part of the country. I mean, pennies to the dollar compared to practically any other part of the country. And so I come to y'all today being very grounded in the realities of what you might be facing in your own ecosystem in Arkansas and nearby. And it's an honor to share time with y'all today and share a little bit of what I've learned along the way. As has been mentioned, today is more of a presentation, although there's definitely a few moments for us to speak. And I do honestly warmly invite you to put questions into the chat as they may come up to you on content. And if it's relevant to what I'm speaking to, the good folks from Cash, you can interrupt me and say, hey, we have a question in chat about this very thing. And I'm happy to go deeper because I want nothing more than for y'all to get as much as you can today. I do believe our conversation will be very rich on the 29th. I think today might be introducing concepts, going over kind of the field of possibilities, what you could be thinking about and doing, with the 29th, giving us a chance to really talk real talk about what it's like for your org, what are your circumstances, what might work for you. So I really do appreciate being here with you all today. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and begin this presentation. All right. So one thing I was hoping to do was just for folks, if you don't mind putting in the chat, just to kind of get a little room check of who's in the space, your name, the organization you're with, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being like the worst day ever and 10 being the best, just how you're doing right now, just to kind of acknowledge maybe the various spaces moods we might be showing up with today. And also feel free to share an event or a success. As I often like to joke with my friends, I've never met anybody who said they wanted to be a fundraiser when they grew up as a child. This wild and wacky world of trying to get the resources for our arts and cultural organizations is hard and tricky business. And so I'm always interested in hearing, both struggles and always success stories. And those magical moments when something does come through. And
Krista, that was name, organization, scale of 1 to 10, how you're feeling, and what was that last bit?
And then just if anybody had an event, or a success that they wish to share, just to get this stuff out in the air right away, how we're coming into this space today. And I can also put that. And I'm just going to kind of read a little bit saying hello to some folks who are saying hello. Let's see. Jason, welcome. Arkansas Philharmonic, A+ today. Wow, you might be in one of the best moods here, folks, today. I see Kelsey. Oh my goodness. Oh, thank you for sharing your success, Kelsey. Paul, welcome. 6 today. Graham's doing pretty okay. Oh, congrats on having your season plan through December. Devanee, welcome. 8.5. Gosh, y'all are really, I'm impressed. The last time I did a workshop, people were in the 3 and 4 range. So to see all of y'all in 6 and 7s and 8s is incredible. And all of these success stories too. Oh my goodness. Colin, welcome with the Sonic Guild. I'm so impressed that you have 12 years of consecutive growth in revenue. It sounds like you might have much to share with us today and over the next couple of times together. Welcome, Karen. As you all continue to say hello, please read the chat, read about each other and your successes. And thank you for just giving me a feel of who you are, what you're up to, how you're feeling today. And I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. Okay, so our objectives for today, pretty much match the workshop description that y'all were given for today. We're really just going to talk about the importance of diverse funding, and it really for your organization's sustainability. Have some ideas to share about revenue and business formation that could be helpful for some of you. And that is one thing I will say.
Hey, Krista, will you please share your screen? Your notes are actually overlapping. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Let me try that again.
No.
Yeah, just want to select the window instead of the full screen. Yeah.
Is that?
It's still the full desktop.
Okay.
So you want to select the
Got
app
it.
instead of the full desktop.
Thank
there
you.
Go. Like you were doing before. Got it.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Sorry. We also are going to do an overview of some alternative revenue models. A lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking about today only will work for some of you, but I will share many ideas that hopefully over the expansiveness of them, some of those things would make sense for your organization. Some of the things I mentioned you might be doing already, but other folks on the call today may not be. And so, please understand we'll be going over a lot of stuff today, some of which might be new to you, some of which might not be. Definitely focusing on strategies for creating new revenue streams and expanding your existing ones. Obviously grants beyond local foundations. And also I brought up some case studies, some organizations that have really focused on diversifying their funding, just so you can see what other folks have done when they maybe have been in a place where that's been really important for them to do. I wanted to make sure one of the things that was listed that we would be discussing today, and then I'm going to go into more deeply, are artist cooperatives and B corporations. But before going into those, I just wanted to make sure we were all working from the same sense of what those are. So an artist cooperative is an autonomous arts organization, enterprise, or association that's jointly owned and democratically controlled by its members. So artist cooperatives can be actually all kinds of different legal entities, from a 501c3 to an LLC, or even a loose collective of people, although eventually most of us, if we want to fundraise, do need some type of legal status. And they might share facilities, services for their artist members, studio space, workshops, things like that. And depending on their structure, all of the economic benefits and all the economic liabilities are shared among the people in the cooperative. B Corps are for-profit companies, but they're for-profit companies that are legally committed to balance purpose and profit. And so these are companies that prioritize social and environmental impact alongside generating financial returns. And so B Corps are all certified by a nonprofit organization called B Lab, whose very purpose of existence is to certify B corporations. And so B corporations have to kind of meet certain standards in order to be legally defined that way. And we'll be diving into those a little bit deeper, a little bit later. And then also something else that you likely all here already know, but just in case, you'll hear me talk a lot today about earned income strategies as well. And earned income is the type of income where there's usually some type of direct exchange of funds for some type of creative experience or product or service. So usually that's where, like, when people buy tickets to your events, or perhaps contract your organization to do something, or perhaps purchase a piece of art from you, those are examples of earned income strategies. And, obviously, today's entire workshop is about diversifying funding, and I imagine that many of you are here because you already know that this is something that you likely need to do. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about why it's so important, but I do want to ground this in the why it is so important right here at the beginning, just because fundraising is challenging, and a lot of the stuff that I'm going to bring up today are not necessarily easy or shortcuts. They are going to be things that take time and energy and a lot of courageous thinking, or working with your communities to figure things out. And so I think often remembering the why that we're trying to do this work can really ground us in that and keep us going on the hard days when some of this work feels so challenging. So, reducing your dependency, relying on a single source of funding, such as a single grant funder or maybe a single major donor or government grant, puts your organization at a huge risk. And if that funding unexpectedly stops, or if a funder decreases your support, you might not even be able to continue operating. And so one of the reasons we want to diversify our funding is to help you reduce dependency on any single source so that your organization has greater stability and resilience. And Diversification allows your organization to mitigate financial risks and maintain stability. So if you diversify your funding streams, you can create a more balanced portfolio. And what else happens to this is that if there's an economic downturn, I know a lot of us faced stuff during COVID. I know a lot of us have been struggling even in this post-COVID, high inflation environment. When there's an economic downturn, there can be shifts in donor priorities. There can also be changes in government funding policies. And so if you have a wide variety of income for your organization, then you have a safety net to, again, make sure that you're sustainable. Diversified funding also enables your nonprofit to adapt to changing circumstances and seize new opportunities. And this is something I really, really, really love to talk and think about, because I know we often come, I think, at the idea of diversifying our funding from a scarcity mindset. Maybe we're coming in because literally we just lost our major donor or our major funder. And so I think when we're in a scarcity mindset, sometimes we don't show up to the table filled with ideas and possibilities of what could happen. And so really thinking about how to diversify your funding also allows you to adapt and to innovate, to be more flexible and responsive to emerging needs or maybe trends that are happening. If one of your programs loses their funding, you might be able to have alternative revenue sources that can help you redirect those resources to keep your programming going. And this is also where exploring alternate funding models, some of which we'll talk about today, and experimenting with new ways to generate earned income can really, really help you supplement maybe the other funding that you're already getting. It also gives you a chance to open doors to reach a broader audience and increase your impact. When we tap into different funding channels, we can target very diverse donors. We can engage with our stakeholders. We can build strategic partnerships with other organizations. And so this expanded reach can kind of become almost like a cycle that supports you to continue to generate financial support. And at the same time, it's increasing your organization's visibility and credibility and influence within your own community. And then finally, all nonprofits, we usually are aiming for long-term sustainability. And we really want to reduce our risks of unpredictable funding fluctuations. So if you have your diverse funding base, you can create a very stable financial foundation that can really sustain your organization over time. And as you probably have experienced, when your organization is stable, that's usually when you're able to attract and retain amazing talent and folks to work with. It's when you're able to then invest in increasing your capacity to create even more programming for your community. And it helps you to plan for your future growth. And so those are the things to keep in mind, that why should we be doing this, as you might be under stress and duress in those moments of understanding you need to diversify your funding. One of the things that when Allison reached out to me about meeting with you all today, she talked about that might be helpful is also just really talking about some alternative revenue models. A lot of us are here today, maybe just your standard 501c3 organization, but there's kind of some other types of ways of doing business emerging. And those are a couple of things I'm going to talk about today. For some of you, some model like this could be a way that you step into the future. In the face of economic certainty, the ravages of the gig economy, layoffs and closures related to the pandemic, and to the overall austerity related to the arts and culture sector, we see a lot of longtime grant funders in particular choosing to no longer invest in arts and culture. So I think we can all agree that arts and culture organizations need better economies. We need ways to build creative practices and to really own the value of our labor, and maybe also to build collective power. We need better ways to make living as an arts and culture workers beyond constantly fundraising and writing grants. And so one of the things that I'm seeing more of than ever before is genuine collaboration. And for a lot of folks, a lot of things that I'm seeing are arts organizations who might be separate 501c3s starting to do a lot more collaboration around sharing expenses, doing things where maybe none of them need a full-time accountant, but all of them need an accountant. And so several orgs might come together to be able to hire an accountant who can serve all of their organizations. I'm seeing long-standing organizations who maybe have larger capacity, but perhaps are really struggling to engage with their community and fill their spaces up, start to think about what it means to fiscally sponsor smaller organizations who could use, fiscal sponsorship and perhaps the stability that a fiscal sponsor could offer, but who brings to that fiscal sponsor new programming and new ways to engage their organizations, their spaces, their communities. But two other things that I wanted to talk about today were cooperatives and B Corps. And both of these offer very innovative approaches to generating income while prioritizing social and cultural impact. So cooperatives are one path to build alternative economic models. And honestly, for as long as there has been art, artists have worked together to support each other's projects and sustain their livelihoods. So this isn't a brand new concept, but I feel like I'm seeing it develop in new ways. And this involves, pooling resources, sharing responsibilities and the rewards, collective decision-making, and pursuit of shared goals to benefit the individual and collective. Indigenous communities around the world and throughout the African continent have long been working in collective or co-op models and ways of being. Other earlier examples include like the medieval guilds in Europe, where artisans such as stonemasons and glaziers work together to meet their common needs. So literally artist collectives have been around for centuries. But the contemporary versions of this range in size. Some are just a few members. Some of them offer scores of members. Some of them focus on people who make art individually. Others focus on groups who make art collaboratively. And others might not be making creative work together at all, but might be working as a co-op to share things like space and administrative labor and things like that. So co-ops are collectively owned and operated, in a more traditional business, or maybe how your 501c3 is set up. Workers sell their labor, right? We get an hourly wage or we get a salary, but the profits go to the owners. So that's why Jeff Bezos got so rich during the pandemic, but the Amazon warehouse employees didn't, right? That's kind of our classic model that you're used to. In a cooperative, the workers are also the owners. And so the risk and reward are shared, and cooperatives are also collectively operated. So decisions are made more collectively about how a place operates. So arts and culture co-ops can deliver improved pay for the workers. A lot of workers are used to being in more precarious, gig-based economy, especially in the arts and culture sectors. And one of the things that became very apparent during COVID is that a lot of creative industry professionals were not protected when things shut down. And so arts co-ops can really help to establish viable working conditions and fair rates of pay. And that can really help to secure the longevity of a creative workforce. They also enable workers to share resources. So I keep on talking about administrative support. But this is one of the things that in other parts of the country, I'm definitely seeing taking off running, are several smaller organizations coming together to figure out what expenses they can share. And maybe they're not necessarily bringing in more revenue, but by lowering their expenses, they're able to use the revenue they are bringing in way more impactful ways. So also some co-ops share equipment or tools. Galleries, a lot of galleries, it turns out, often are running as co-ops. Same with performance venues. So this is one of the wonderful things about them. It also gives folks a chance to engage with people who are like-minded. Obviously, a lot of us are in arts and culture because creativity and artistry really fuels our own sense of culture and identity. But that can be a really lonely journey for those of us who are individual artists. And so when you're joining together with other creatives, or when your nonprofit is joining together with other creative organizations, you can really increase the community of knowledge, the artistry, the camaraderie, inspire each other. And also, it allows communities or consumers or audiences to also band together to access and promote the arts and cultural activities. And so that can allow for artists to have a more, ethical channel to promote and sell their work. So there's lots of examples of community-owned co-ops that are doing incredible work in terms of just especially for visual artists, really supporting them to move their work, move their inventory of their creative labor. For a lot of us, the idea of a co-op can be very new or unfamiliar, but there are truly plenty of creatives working together in this way. And so I've rounded up some examples just so you have a sense of what's going on elsewhere. One lovely place is the Q Artists Cooperative, and they're in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. I bring this up because Stevens Point is by no means a major city. This is in a more rural area, a smaller town. And this cooperative has created a gallery for artists to show and sell their work in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. So the artists can become members of the co-op through an application process. And then once they're a member, they pay dues to cover the operating expenses. They also work gallery hours, and they participate in the collective running of the gallery. But then they also get to share in the profits of what comes through the gallery. Another example is Northwood's Pioneer Gallery and Gifts, and that's in northern Minnesota. And this is actually the longest continuously operating art and craft co-op in Minnesota. And it's a very similar thing. It's composed of 50 different artisans, craft peoples, who have come together to form a co-op. They share the expenses of what it means to run the business, and they also share the profits. And then I spent 15 years living in Oakland, California. And recently, one of the co-ops that I've been so inspired by is just getting started there. And I wanted to bring them up because they're really amazing creative thinkers who are just now diving into what the potential of co-op could mean for them in Oakland. And so they are taking over a space called Esther's Orbit Room. And this is a cultural revival project named after Esther Mabry, who was an Oakland-based Black woman who owned and operated a blues and jazz club all the way back in 1959. And this place was a huge place in Oakland where all kinds of amazing talent came through in the 60s and 70s. And the club operated until 2011 when Mabry passed away. And one of the things that's been happening in Oakland is that there's been a lot of intense gentrification and displacement, particularly of Black community members there. And so this effort is being led by Oakland's Black community members to revive a space that was once a huge part of their community and to revive it as a co-op. And they're partnering with small businesses along a historic corridor that served the Black community in West Oakland. And they're using a community-led planning model that's really honoring the neighborhood, the residents, and the historic district of this community. And so one of the things that they're doing that's really interesting is that they're kind of bringing in different types of businesses to all be a part of the co-op. So there will be a cafe there. There will be a bar there. There will be performance spaces. Healing arts practitioners will have space there. There will be studios for movement arts. They're planting a community garden. And even with this building, they're even going to be able to offer affordable housing to artists and worker owners of the commercial spaces. And they're doing all of this in a co-op model. And so to think of this community that was in such dire straits really coming together to dream the type of space that could be so impactful for their community and to do it in this non-hierarchical co-op way has really been exciting to a lot of people. And so Esther's Orbit Room is starting to get a good little bit of attention. If you're like feeling this co-op, idea, there's a couple of CCI webinars that are literally about co-ops and really dive in deep to the legal aspects of it and what it means to create this. And so please check those out if this is something that you're more interested in. I know that another fairly common use of an artist cooperative is in education and arts education. So those of you who are doing classes or workshops or have like regular artistic education activities, this could be something that could happen in a co-op model where you're sharing space, able to co-market each other's, programming, things like that. So successful artist cooperatives that have found that serving a community-based benefits definitely comes with additional benefits. And so what we're seeing are for art spaces that are operating as co-ops, they are often becoming kind of hubs in their own artistic community. They're producing social gatherings. Non-arts related organizations are coming into their spaces to have meetings. What this means is that they're starting to generate rental income. And that's helping to sustain the cooperative in ways that might be quite not hugely impactful on the co-op's own capacity. So there's lots of exciting things about how a co-op can work there for you. But there's also, another advantage is that there are things like insurance and other kind of administrative things that often can be very burdensome for individual organizations or for small individual organizations. So again, pulling those resources. And then I also just wanted I mentioned this earlier, but I kind of think about it as like having a co-op mindset. Maybe you're not a co-op, maybe you're not interested in going that way. But what might be interested to some of your organizations is that some of you might think of as a potential revenue stream for your organization, especially if you have a space, especially if you maybe have larger capacity, is becoming a fiscal sponsor and fiscal sponsoring smaller organizations who might need a space, who might need some of the administrative capacity that you could offer. For folks who are offering fiscal sponsorship, that is an earned income source of money. The people you fiscally sponsor provide fiscal sponsorship fees from the income that they receive, and that becomes a source of income generation for your organization. For organizations that are being fiscal sponsored, well, yes, you have to pay that fiscal sponsor fee having a fiscal sponsor can open up a whole new world for you in funding opportunities. It likely makes you eligible for far more grants. It also makes you eligible to receive donations, to 501c3 nonprofit charitable donations. And so while that's different than a co-op, it is a way for some of you to maybe start thinking of some changes that you could make to collaborate with other organizations to share some of these expenses and or to generate income by offering a service that smaller organizations might need. Oh, okay. I think my screen just jumped ahead and I can't get it to go back. I also wanted to talk about B corporations. And so B Corps have a very different legal structure than necessarily co-ops, because B corporations are a for-profit entity. They're not a nonprofit entity. And so they use their business as a force of good. You know, they've had to fulfill certain things in order to even be able to meet this requirement of being a B Corp. And so they offer sustainable practices, fair employment, ethical sourcing, community engagements. And they're regularly assessed to make sure that they're maintaining those things, that they're maintaining their certification, and that they're demonstrating an ongoing commitment to their social and environmental goals. So B corporations generate revenue through their products or their services, but they also leverage their commitment to social and environmental impact. And this means they often attract consumers and investors who are really excited about their mission-driven approach. And so in the arts sector, you know, some B Corps that exist, one is Better World Books. Okay, they're an online bookseller, for-profit entity that funds literacy projects. And so they donate a book for each purchase. And then they also keep old books out of landfills, right? So they've got that sustainability factor going on too. This organization started all the way back in 2003. They're 20 years old now. When they first started, the internet was just a teeny tiny baby. Social media didn't exist, anything like that. But they were able to start this little kind of online repository that has grown since then to a huge organization. And so that is one B Corp that is in the arts and culture world. Playing for Change also started in 2002. So they've been around for about 20 years now. And their whole thing, they're musical artists who came together. The founders of this organization were traveling the United States and filming musicians. And they created a documentary. And that became so big that they decided to kind of find other musicians and film musicians and create this nonprofit organization that builds music and art schools for children around the world. And so they use their profits and their kind of business to do that work. Participant Media is a film and television series and digital short form kind of B corporation. And so their whole thing, these are media artists who have banded together and created a for-profit entity, a B corporation, to create digital media, whether it's films or television, independent media, stuff that we see on the internet that will inspire social change. So Participant Media are the folks behind it, Inconvenient Truth, Food Inc., He Named Me Malala. They also create digital episodes about art and culture and science and philosophy. So they have a worldwide network of traditional and media artists and are using that to really have real world impact on their art, on what they're putting out. So both cooperatives and B Corps represent alternative revenue models that prioritize values and impact and shared benefits. And they offer unique structures and approaches to doing business that might align with the values and missions of perhaps some of your organizations. And that was something we just wanted to touch on here today before diving into some of the more classic ways that we think about creating diverse revenue models. So creating revenue models for your nonprofit organization usually involves designing some type of plan or some type of strategies that will generate income and sustain your operation. And so there are some steps to consider when developing your revenue models or your revenue needs. And the first thing you want to do is to assess your organization's needs. In order to create a revenue model, you first need to understand how much money you even need, right, to do your work. And so really thinking through your operational expenses, all of your program costs, all the staff salaries or folks that you're paying. If you have infrastructure requirements of any kind, perhaps you have debt or other financial obligations. So having an understanding of the revenue needed to support your organization's mission. Once you do that, you'll want to identify your core revenue sources. And that's where you will determine what the primary sources of revenue are. And I'm going to jump into a lot of those common sources in the next slide. After you've assessed your needs, you've identified your core revenue sources, the final part of really creating diverse revenue models is then you have to monitor the performance and effectiveness of the revenue streams. So this is where, you're assessing which of your sources are generating the most revenue, which ones do you need a shift or change? And really being open to what it means to adapt or refine these revenue models based on changing circumstances or perhaps emerging opportunities, where you are. So more than anything, I can't stress enough how wonderful it is when your revenue model is aligning with your organization's mission and values so that you're maintaining transparency and accountability and strong relationships with your supporters and funders and family members who come to experience your organization's artistic output. All right. I know a lot of folks, when you were talking about what you were hoping to get out of today, you were just interested in strategies for creating new streams or expanding your revenue streams. And is this bad news? I don't know. I will just say, in some ways, there's not a ton of new ways to raise funding these days. But I think there's a lot of ways that we haven't thought about, a lot of ways that maybe our organization hasn't done. And certainly there are trends that are happening in creating new revenue streams. So, one of the things that is a strategy for you to use to figure out what your revenue stream should be is market research and audience analysis. And that's where you're really trying to figure out what are the potential gaps or unmet needs in your communities or with your audiences? Really trying to understand their preferences and behaviors and their willingness to pay for different offerings. Really understanding your community and the folks you're hoping will engage with your art. And the reason why that research can be so helpful is because that information is going to be what helps you to develop new revenue streams, or rather, even more likely than that, something that's new is tailoring your existing revenue streams to better serve your audience. And so knowing who they are, what they want, what they need, what they're willing to spend, these are all things that can really give you the knowledge that you need. Number 2 here, product or service diversification. You might be able to expand your offerings by developing new products or services that align with your mission and meet the needs of your communities and audiences. For a lot of you, that could look like offering additional educational programs that folks pay to attend. It might be offering workshops. Some organizations are realizing that their staff and the artists they work with themselves are experts in certain things, and they're starting to offer consulting services based on what they're an expert in. A great example of this is an organization I work with based in San Francisco called Urban Jazz Dance Company. Urban Jazz Dance Company is a deaf, Black-led dance company. And as ASL users, people who use American Sign Language, they have a certain expertise in what it means to provide accessible arts offerings to their community. And now that a lot of people are really starting to pay attention and want their organizations to be more accessible out in the world, they're hiring and contracting the folks from Urban Jazz Dance Company to consult with them, to support them to have the information they need to also be more accessible to their communities. And so I'm seeing a lot of organizations start to offer consultations in areas that they're experts in. And this is a way that they've been able to diversify and generate funding. Customized artistic experiences is also something that you can do in your organization to perhaps offer a new service that you haven't offered before. And so really thinking creatively about how you can leverage your organization's expertise and assets to create value for your audience and participants is a fantastic strategy to use when thinking about how you're going to generate new or increase revenues in already existing revenue streams. Digital technologies, I mean, if you have not already embraced them, I would say, obviously, since COVID began, and it is continuing, although it looks a little different than it did at the beginning of the pandemic, but folks who are embracing digital technologies are seeing all kinds of ways that they're able to increase their revenue. First and foremost, in the past, most of us were only able to offer artistic experiences that were in person. And of course, this very much limits who our audience is. You know, it's going to be people who are usually very close to us in our vicinity. And so digital transformation allows you to reach wider audiences. You also can monetize your digital content. You also can monetize your digital services. So for some of you, you could be creating online courses. Some of you might offer digital subscriptions, a way for folks to engage in your programming digitally. Some of you might have an archive of incredible footage of previous productions that you could be providing as on-demand content for your community. Visual artists are finding that e-commerce platforms are one of the best ways that they can actually be doing merchandise sales. While in-person stores are still there and still happening, a lot of visual artists are realizing that they can get far more sales, engage far more people by really digging into e-commerce platforms. And of course, in the days and age of COVID and since then, we also know that a lot of folks are doing virtual events and performances. Folks who are really active on social media, and I know that the platforms change all the time, but in general, Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, maybe YouTube, they're doing an incredible job leveraging their social media and digital marketing strategies to increase their visibility and attract online customers and donors. I know that some of you already have membership models, and I know from at least a couple of the responses on the form, you're maybe wanting to get away from the membership models. But some folks have never tried membership models before and are learning that they can be a really great source of membership and subscription models of getting regular income through the door. And I have to say that and all the arts organizations that I've worked in, without a doubt, the one who had the healthiest, diverse income I've ever seen. A quarter of their income came from their membership alone. And then they had about a quarter of their income through grants, about a quarter of their income through earned income, and another quarter of their income through government funding. And so it was like this beautiful portfolio of genuine kind of real diversity in how they were being funded. But their membership base was one of the most important elements of it. And one of the things that's great about membership is that unlike individual donations, which sometimes can just be one and done, somebody might make a one-time donation to your organization and that's it. Membership and subscriptions, those have the highest percentage of people who will renew, people who will give again. And so that can actually become one of your best sources of funding because it can be so consistent year after year. A lot of folks who offer membership or subscriptions usually offer some type of benefits, maybe access to premium content, if you're using Patreon as your way to have subscriptions. A lot of folks who do ticket sales might offer their members early ticket sales, discounted ticket sales. And I see a lot of things like personalized experiences being offered. Perhaps you are offering folks a sneak peek into backstage or a special tour of your space, or maybe a special Q&A session that you get to attend after a performance with one of the lead actors or dancers. There's lots of ways that you can offer really special kind of personalized experiences to incentivize folks to become members or subscribers. If you do take this route, I would say some of the things about it on the downside are that you do have to continuously think through the value that you're offering to your membership in order to retain and grow it. And then secondly, it does create a transactional relationship with your members that is very different than individual donors. Usually when somebody is an individual donor, they're kind of happy to make this donation to your organization. They're not expecting anything in return. And that's a wonderful type of relationship that you want to build. While membership and subscription has many wonderful things to offer, that recurring revenue being what tops the list, it does create a transactional relationship. Usually your members or subscribers do expect something in exchange for that donation. And so that's something that makes it a wonderful thing for some orgs, and some orgs, it may not be the right pathway for you. I mentioned earlier the importance of strategic partnerships and collaborations. And I truly think this is where I'm seeing some of the most awesome work happening on the local level across the country with particularly smaller arts organizations who are really struggling to have capacity and to grow their revenue. And then I'm also seeing it with larger organizations in the Bay Area. There's the symphony and the ballet and the opera who are really struggling to connect with communities in the way they once did. And maybe they are they need more people in their space. They need younger audiences in their space. They could use ways to more deeply engage with community. And so I'm seeing some strategic partnerships and collaborations happen where organizations are forging partnerships where maybe they have complementary missions. Maybe they have a reason to come together to for both of them, it's a way to expand their reach or access new revenue streams. So I'm seeing joint marketing initiatives happen. I'm seeing co-branded products or services. I'm seeing a lot of cross promotion and a lot of shared events. And folks are identifying partners who share their values and who engage a similar audience. And they're seeing that these collaborations, in the arts and culture world, a lot of times we don't like to talk about how competitive we are with each other. But, the arts world has been slow to offer a lot of partnerships and collaborations amongst organizations. And the ones who are starting to get together and partner more to create stuff, they're starting to see financial benefits to that. They're also starting to see expanded audiences. rather than losing audiences when they are partnering with folks, they're actually growing their audiences. And it's been really exciting for organizations who have really leaned into what it means to be a highly collaborative arts and culture organization. Though not for all organizations, some organizations are evaluating their intellectual property, their artistic creations, trademarks or copyrighted materials, and licensing them. And if you do have the type of artistic product that makes sense to do, you can explore licensing opportunities to generate revenue through royalties or fees. That might be licensing your content for commercial use, something that works particularly well for photographers and some visual artists. It might be collaborating with brands for co-branded merchandise. It might be giving somebody the right to adapt or perform a work your organization created or has the rights to. But certainly this is one way of generating more revenue. In terms of strategies, also use your data. A lot of times we see right before our eyes the money that's coming in the door, who it's coming from. We know or understand if that came from an email we sent out or a social media thing we did or a crowdsourced fundraiser. Be sure to be collecting this information. Collect your audience demographics. You know, who's in that room and who's not in that room. And what are the gaps there that you can really make sure your audience is who you hope it is, or that it's truly diverse and representative of everybody in your community. What are your audience's behavior patterns? So there's lots of things, and understanding who your audience is that can really help you evaluate the success of different initiatives and to optimize your strategies over time to meet with them. And so I just can't stress enough the importance of evaluating what you're up to, constantly. Evaluate the feasibility of something. Is it scalable, what you're doing? Is it sustainable? One of the things that those of us who have been in fundraising for a long time know is how many fundraising efforts are not sustainable. They're not. And some of us work in places where even though it's been proven it's not sustainable, we still are doing the same things in the same way and getting the same results, which may not be the results we want. And so what does it mean to say this isn't working? We're going to try something new. We're going to adapt our strategy based on the market and our audience feedback and our financial analysis. And so really checking in and making sure that your data is driving your decision-making is one of the most important strategies for really creating new and increasing your current revenue funds. In addition to these different strategies, I also just kind of a brainstorm a little bit of just various revenue opportunities that are pretty unique to the art and culture section. I already talked about earned income from artistic offerings, but this obviously can include ticket sales for performances or exhibitions or screenings. It also might be merchandise sales related to your artistic content. Folks have been all over the place with merchandise sales. I've seen folks invest a lot of money in merchandise and have it not go well. And then it's at a loss for them. And then I've seen folks really invest very smart, instead of buying a bunch of things and a bunch of different sizes that may not sell, maybe they come up with one thing that is a must-have item. And that one thing, they keep their expenses down on what that item is, but they're able to sell it, to practically everybody who walks in because they love that one item. Licensing or royalties, we just discussed, this is earned income, fees for educational workshops or classes. So really thinking through, sitting with your team and thinking through what are the unique aspects of your artistic programs that might have market appeal and what it means to explore different pricing models and packaging options to really get your earned income up. Develop arts education and outreach programs that can generate revenue while fulfilling your mission to engage and educate your communities. This could be workshops or masterclasses or training programs for aspiring artists or students or professionals who want to enhance their skills. If you have arts education and outreach programs, you're often able to then develop partnerships with schools, often who can contract you to teach within the schools. Also, my partner started a literary program for elders, teaching programs to elders. She had no money at the beginning of starting this at all. She just had a dream of teaching poetry to elders. But she started connecting to community centers in her community who worked with elder populations, and she secured contracts. It started small, just a $1,000 contract with 5 different community centers in the area that we live in. But that gave her enough money to start teaching those classes. Then she started to get grant funding. Then she was able to expand her programming. And it all started just with like partnership with a community center to teach poetry. Businesses also provide arts-based learning experiences or creative team building sessions for their staff. I'm seeing tons of arts organizations around the holiday time really think through and figure out how they can get some earned income going by offering unique artistic experiences, perhaps classes or something in their space that a business can use as like a holiday gathering for their staff or a special, summertime gathering for their staff. And this is such a beautiful thing because you're making earned income from the business who's paying you to offer this service. And then you're being introduced to a whole new group of potential audiences, volunteers, folks you might give to your organization in the future. So all of these things kind of fall under arts education and outreach. Some of you have venues, if you own or operate a performance space or a gallery or a facility, and you're not already, consider renting out your space. Corporate events, weddings, private parties, conferences, more than anything, other arts organizations, some of whom may be looking for a space to produce what they're doing. But for those of you who have space, what does it mean to explore partnerships with event planners or wedding venues or local businesses to increase the bookings for your space? Chances are you're not using your space all the time. And there could be a way that you're really generating revenue from rentals that would align with your mission and that does not disrupt your core artistic programming. I talked about digital, and online revenue streams already, but exploring live streaming is one of the most common ways I'm seeing this. If you are a theater company or a dance company or having some type of live performing arts experience, and it's happening in a place that has 200 seats and you're able to sell 200 tickets, to your community to go there, that's awesome. What if you also were set up so that your event was being live streamed? And maybe your live streaming tickets are a lot less. Maybe it's $10 for somebody to buy a ticket to come to your performance in person, and you're offering your live streaming for $5 a pop or $10 a pop, live stream and $20 in person ticket. That's just extra money. That's extra money coming in your door for any single event that you're doing, and very little, impact on you. So it's just a way to generate additional income. And so many folks had to start live streaming during COVID that they started getting really good at the production elements of live streaming. And now that they're refilling their houses again with in-person audiences, they're still offering the live streaming and generating a whole new source of revenue that way. Selling digital art or merchandise online, developing partnerships with streaming platforms or online marketplaces, again, to reach a wider audience, to expand your revenue past the physical limitation of where you are. In terms of collaborations, you could be collaborating with other arts organizations or cultural institutions or artists themselves to create co-productions or joint projects. This means that you're pooling your resources, you're sharing your costs. That helps you reduce the financial burden. You're also reaching new audiences through your partner's audience. So collaborations can lead to shared revenue opportunities, co-marketing efforts, and increase visibility for everybody. And so it's really a win-win. Art sales and art rentals, if you produce or exhibit visual arts, consider establishing an art sales program. Offer artworks for sale to individuals or collectors or businesses and earn a percentage of the sales. Explore art rental programs where individuals or businesses can rent artworks for a specific period. A lot of us who are arts and cultural organizations are actually sitting on incredible artwork, visual artwork in some way. What does it mean to get those artworks out into the community? Giving that love to the artists themselves, but doing so in a way that can generate income for your organization. There's now some arts folks who have like a restaurant that they're putting brand new artwork up every single month. The restaurant is paying them a fee to be, putting the art up, taking it down, keeping it new all the time. The restaurant's able to bring in new business because folks are always coming in to see who the new art is. And so everybody's winning, but it's a way to generate more income. Fundraising events, honestly, as somebody who's been doing fundraising for 20 years, they're my least favorite thing. And those of you who have organized a fundraising event, maybe there's some success stories in the room. I love hearing them. But usually one of the things that are the worst about fundraising events is usually it takes up a lot of time for everybody on your staff to have to organize this thing. Sometimes the cost of the fundraiser can be very high, which means you're not bringing in a ton of income on it. And so it can be really stressful to everybody who works at your org with not a ton of output. But there's ways that you can really be creative in the fundraising events that you do. And maybe that means, I think the days of the ritzy themed galas with $200 tickets and a room full of people who may not even be your own community of people that you're working with, I think those are starting to be on the wane. And what I'm seeing now, especially with smaller organizations, are way more creative ideas that are way more aligned, I think, with the organization's mission, where maybe they're creating immersive experiences that showcase the creativity and the talent of their org. Maybe they're offering themed experiences or interactive performances that engage attendees. They're doing, it's like they're thinking less about producing that big fancy event that costs thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to produce, and really bringing it in on what can they do that like helps their organization shine, that aligns with their mission and values, but that is less cost prohibitive, both for them to produce and also for who shows up. A lot of folks may not be able to afford a $200 ticket to a gala, but are more than happy to pay $25 to show up to a less fancy fundraising event. And so really thinking through what that could look like. Apple Shop, which is located in Eastern Kentucky, and has one of the largest traditional arts, one of the largest bluegrass and original wood instrument collections in the world, was flooded this past year horrendously. And they did a fantastic fundraiser where they partnered with the Kentucky Theater. It was tickets, I want to say, were $20 a person, but the theater held 1,000 people. So you can see where that adds up. The theater donated its space, and they just showed films that had been made in their organization. They had a couple of authors affiliated with their organization really speak to what was going on and the importance of Apple Shop and their work in the community. And they had a live bluegrass band close out the show. Everybody donated, all of those things. The folks in the audience could give more money if they wanted, but just selling out that theater at $20 a pop really generated a good little bit of money for them in a way that felt true to who they were, which is not some fancy organization working with a lot of really wealthy people.
Krista, I just want to give you a time check. We have a little less than 15 minutes left.
Thank you for that time check. The last thing I will talk about really quickly here on this list. Obviously we all know about donors. You're going to want to cultivate relationships with individual donors who are passionate about arts and culture. That might mean creating some type of donor engagement strategy that really emphasizes your organization's work. And a lot of folks are launching membership programs that provide, benefits or privileges to donors. But again, the up and down side of that is that transactional versus not transactional. And corporate partnerships and sponsorships obviously can be a great way to get revenue. You're obviously going to work with corporations who align with your values and your mission. And then finally, grants. And I know that a lot of you have maybe, I know that Northern Arkansas might not have the grant kind of resources that some other parts of the country have. I think there's a couple of very large funders, maybe some of whom have changed their priorities lately, but there is a world of possibility with grants still, and really thinking about who national funders are. And this is also where I feel like you all banding together and really advocating for your needs, what it might look like to approach some of the larger funders as a ecosystem, helping them understand what your local community looks like and the type of support that you might need from somebody who maybe isn't even located in your local community. No matter what, really staying in contact communication is one of the most important things you could be doing no matter what your funding strategies are. The single most important thing you can be doing is engaging with your people that care about you and your work. And that's your donors, of course, it's your audiences, it's your community, the artists you're working with. Always be sure to thank everybody, but be sure that you're just communicating what you're up to and how they can plug into your work. And be honest with them. If your story is that you're struggling right now, it's okay to let them know. Let them know how they can help you. Provide them with a sense of, we need this much money to do this. We're looking for 100 donors who can donate $100 to keep our, whatever it might be, programming going in the fall. The more you communicate, the good, the bad, the ugly with your community, the more they're a part of your family, the more they see their own responsibility in keeping your organization going, and the more they're willing to be partnered with you in that. Very quickly, just a few different arts and culture organizations who have recently diversified their revenue in ways that I have kind of talked about. The Metropolitan Museum of Art started doing revenue generating initiatives. They'd always had donations and memberships. They've always had corporate sponsorships, but they really started doing merchandise sales, licensing partnerships, special exhibition ticket sales, and events revenue, venue rentals. And they now have a much more diverse and sustainable income. The Public Theater in New York started offering free ticketed performances, which seemed nuts to folks. Wait, you're trying to generate money and you offered something for free. But actually what happened is those free performances started to attract far more diverse audiences than they'd ever had before. The community started to build trust and relationship with them and became a part of their theater community, often donating more money than they ever would have paid for that ticket. Again, they started doing rentals for corporate events, weddings, conferences. They also started a food and beverage business within their own premises, which began to generate additional revenue for them as well. San Francisco Symphony started subscription packages, educational programs, and they formed collaborations with corporate sponsors and foundations and individual donors to secure funding for specific programs or initiatives. A lot of these were initiatives that supported historically excluded communities. The Walker Arts Center in Minneapolis is one of the orgs that started doing consulting services to other arts organizations sharing their knowledge about curating. They also started touring their exhibitions to other venues. So they started renting out their actual exhibition. And that led to immense revenue generation for them. The National Theatre in London launched a live theater program. You may have been to the movie theater and seen this exact thing. They now broadcast their performances to cinemas all over the world. And this has generated a whole new sense of ticket sales that never existed for them ever before. They also started offering on-demand streaming. You can offer on-demand streaming through your website even. It is something you can do on the back end. So I'm going to pause here. I'm going to stop my share, respect our time. I know that I did not get through grants today, although there's a lot of great information in this information that you are being shared in the PDF. But I want to pause here and let's just use the rest of the time today to get any questions answered, pushback, talk through things that may have sparked for you, questions you may have. And we can re-meet again on the 29th to go deeper into your questions. And I'm happy to also touch base on those grants then as well.